Israeli forces are conducting one of the largest raids in cities across the occupied West Bank since the war in Gaza began. Its forces have entered Ramallah, Jenin, Hebron, Nablus and Tulkarem. These are pictures coming out of Ramallah, where clashes have broken out. Several Palestinians and an Israeli soldier have been injured. The raids have become an almost nightly occurrence since October 7th. Well, a paramedic in Ramallah has described some of the scenes that have been taking place as he picked up some of those injured in the raids.
We treated and transported 4 injured Palestinians who were shot in the chest, shoulder, leg and sensitive areas with .223 caliber rounds. We were able to get the injured to the hospitals, and 2 other injuries were transported by our colleagues from the Palestinian Red Crescent.
Well, Imran Khan joins us on the phone now from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Imran, so we've seen this huge increase in the scale and tempo of Israeli military raids across the West Bank overnight. Just talk us through what you've been seeing and hearing.
Well, the raids began around 1 a.m. in the morning. Where I am is called Al-Nada Street. It leads into the center of Ramallah, Menara Square, where actually Al Jazeera's office is based. At 1 a.m. in the morning, the Israeli forces came in. They cleared the area using sound bombs, sound grenades, and tear gas. You could smell the tear gas heavy in the air. Once they'd done that, they actually then surrounded and cut off the streets to my hotel, and then about an hour later they brought in reinforcements and used this area where I am directly in front of me as a staging post for the raids that then began with much more intensity in the center of Ramallah. What we're hearing is the raids have been directed at money exchange places. You can probably just hear another explosion in the background there. The money exchange places, the Israelis have long said, have been used by resistance groups to finance their activities, but they're also just part and parcel of daily life in any big city in the world. But the size of this raid is very unusual. When the reinforcements arrived, I counted 20 armoured vehicles. That's a significantly larger amount of armoured vehicles than we've seen in Ramallah in a very, very long time. 16 of those armoured vehicles then went into where the raids were taking place, about half a mile away from where I am as the crow flies. There was a huge explosion around about 3 o'clock local time. That explosion, we now know, was against a commercial property. It was a controlled explosion to enter into the building where a money exchange place was then raided. We're hearing the owners have been detained and that records have been taken. I've seen physically myself 2 Israeli soldiers with a very, very large bag take that bag into one of the vehicles. As I'm speaking to you right now, there are 6 Israeli vehicles on the street, but they've actually changed direction. They look like they're getting ready to withdraw. This raid is still ongoing, however, as you heard clashes and explosions there in the background.
Imran, since October 7th, it's worth pointing out we've seen over 300 Palestinians killed, hundreds arrested by Israeli forces across the West Bank. What is Israel's objective here in stepping up these nightly raids?
Well, Israel itself says the raids are mounted against people who they believe are part of the resistance. So they're going into places like Nur Hasham's refugee camp, Jenin refugee camp. They're going into Al-Fawad refugee camp in near Hebron and into Jericho as well. And they go in, and what they do, it's very typical, and I've just described the scene here in Ramallah as well. They go in with lots of armed vehicles and lots of soldiers on foot. They then arrest the people. 4,800 people have been arrested since October the 7th. At least half of those are held without charge on what's called administrative detention. So that's one of the raid's objectives. However, in Nur Hasham's camp in Tulkarem. I was there in the aftermath of a drone strike that actually killed 6 Palestinians. Now, they were unarmed. Local residents told us they had no history of being part of the armed resistance. The Israelis called them militants and said that that's the reason they were attacked. Also, in that same raid, a Israeli soldier walked into an ambulance and stabbed a Palestinian in the neck whilst he was in the ambulance. There was a scene that was described as horrific by the paramedic, who's now very worried about retribution against him once he reported that incident. So these are the raids that are going on. This is the kind of tactics that the Israelis are using. 42 raids a night. That's now the official figure that's been given by the Palestinian Authority. That is a far larger figure than we've seen since before October the 7th. Before October the 7th, you may have seen 1, 2 raids, perhaps at night, over fairly shortly. Now the raids, like I say, increasing in frequency. 42 of them a night on average. Then the raids are actually taking place during the day, which never happened before. Also, they're taking a lot longer. There was a raid last week in Jenin that lasted nearly 50 hours.
Okay. Imran, just describe to our viewers what sort of places are being targeted in these Israeli raids. I mean, you mentioned money exchanges being targeted. What's the thinking behind that? And just describe for us other places, individuals that they're hitting.
Well, the money exchange places is unusual, I have to say. That's something that I haven't really seen before. The Israelis have long said that the resistance groups use the money exchange places to finance their activities. But normally, these raids are part of an arrest campaign across the occupied West Bank. Now, let's just take a look at what that means. Remember, during the ceasefire, there was a prisoner exchange done for Israeli captives held by Hamas. The amount of prisoners that they released in that ceasefire exchange, in the same period, during the ceasefire, they arrested almost the same amount of people. So this is all about going in and getting people and arresting people. The arrest campaign is really what's driving this. This money exchange thing here in the center of Ramallah, that is actually a new tactic on me. But we have seen this in previous years. And like I say, the Israelis do think that the resistance groups use those money exchange places to finance their activities.
All right, Imran Khan, live for us there in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, just updating us there on those latest Israeli raids.